All right, let's draw this monster buck. Here are the supplies you'll need to draw along. Number 2 pencil, computer paper, and black and white ink. Alcohol markers are optional. And this is my setup, so I'm able to film top down for you guys to view. Okay, let's get into this. I got my finished drawing kind of posted up in the left corner if you're drawing along. For the first steps for me in my drawing process is I will try to break the paper down into the ratio that the reference image that I was using. In this case, it was like a 4x5, almost a square, so I try to make the paper more square shaped. From there, I start focusing on like the negative space or the space around the deer in the image and trying to break down where the deer will live on my piece of paper. In my mind, I'm always putting like a grid over the top of the paper, just thinking about it, trying to create horizontals and verticals where they should line up based on major landing spots like the shoulder, the eye, or the ears, and the angles of the head, just trying to get everything correct. This first stage I draw very lightly. I do not want to put too harsh of a mark down because it's very hard to erase. And then I spend more time trying to move things later on. I don't want to focus too heavily in one area, so I'm just going to cohesively make the drawing kind of the same across the board until I get the majority of the deer on the paper. So if you're curious, this drawing was originally about 44 minutes long. I've sped it up quite a bit. This sped up process is now like 9 to 10 minutes long. That being said, if you're trying to draw along, don't feel like you need to draw at this speed. Even 40 minutes is really fast. Just take your time and follow along, rewind if needed. So as I get further along in this drawing process, I start boxing in and creating more smaller shapes. So like the nose shape, the jawline, and the eyes are just boxes right now. But eventually I'm just trying to figure out where they are placement-wise and how they should look. So essentially I'm just trying to get the bigger shapes down to smaller shapes, down to even smaller shapes as far as where everything's going to live. And then from there, then I start adding more details, finer details, and I can start getting heavier with the pencil because I know I'm not going to erase. I still don't like to work too heavily in one spot, so that's why I kind of bounce around. I'll detail out the face just because as an artist and as just a person, you like to see the face come alive. But once I get that down a little bit, I start moving on to other parts of the body. Like the antlers are pretty complicated. Right now they're just chicken scratches as areas where they're gonna be, but they haven't been fully fleshed out yet. I might put in some shadow on the ears, but that's just because I'm still focusing on the face at this point. It's natural. You're gonna want to focus on the main focal point, which is the head. But yeah, because it's boring to me to just hit shadows, but it's essential to make the thing pop. Contrast is basically what you're seeing when you think of lights and darks. So you want to make sure your brights are bright and your darks are dark. So here's the shadow of the neck and the head actually being bounced onto the back of the deer. In my reference image, it had that kind of cast shadow over its back. So I kind of just use that. When I like to shade, I'm right-handed. I'll kind of do a crosshatch kind of type deal, but I just go at a 45, and I like to go consistently at one direction, at least primarily through the whole piece. I try to get just an even coat of one gray tone over the whole body. If I just have number 2 pencil, that's fine. If all you have is a number 2 pencil, I would suggest maybe even using cross-hatching and blending in with your finger, smudging the graphite around, and possibly, if you don't want to get your fingers dirty, getting a blending stump. That's a good way to get value in. So if you like the idea of just keeping this pencil drawing, they do make different types of pencils too. I mean, obviously there's mechanical pencils that are good for fine details, but the number 2 pencil that I'm using here that you have in school is basically an HB2. So there's different hardnesses of pencils. So there's H and B levels of hardness. And basically the B is what you would want to use if you want to blend and get darker colors. The H numbered pencils get lighter as the number goes up. So I would suggest using a B6 or a B8 or any of the higher number B pencils. That lead is very soft. It's not lead, it's graphite, but it'll get you darker darks than you can with a number 2 pencil in like a quarter of the time. So it's worth it. Just be advised when you use like a B pencil, they smudge a lot more. So you might want to use a sheet of paper under your wrist while you're drawing. I like the look of graphite. It kind of gives off that gray color on the paper, but you could also use charcoal, but charcoal is more of a black color. So it's very stark difference between the pencil marks that are gray graphite and charcoal. So I stay away from that unless you are going to fully dive deep into charcoal. So now I'm just inking in the darkest parts of the deer. I'm using a really fine ink, so I am outlining the whole thing, but you don't have to. If you have a different background, you can usually use like the background colors to make the deer pop forward, so you don't necessarily need to outline it. When you outline things, it tends to look a little cartoony, which it's not a bad thing, but I try to stay away from using harsh lines as much as possible, at least harsh black lines. If you want it to look realistic, that is. If you're getting any value from this video, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, that'd be awesome. And possibly leave me a comment. What should I draw next? All right, so now that you hit that like button, from here on out, I basically just continue inking in the majority of the deer that I've drawn with this super fine 0.1 micron pen. Once I finish inking in the deer, then I'll move into the copic markers. Again, I use like an odd set. I kind of have W3, W5, and W7. The W stands for warm. I start with the 5 first, hitting the darkest areas, and then I'll push lighter and darker as I need to. So this being warm grays, it's easier to start kind of with the middle tone, the 5, and just hit everything as best I can where the darkest areas are. I like to start with the W5 just to see how dark it looks in comparison to the rest of the drawing. I found sometimes when you go over, like on computer paper, graphite pencil, like cross-hatching, sometimes it pushes that graphite around and smears it around, which can be detrimental or have a good effect. In this case, it helps blend the fur a little bit more and gives you a textured look to the deer. So from here on out in this drawing process, I'll bounce around from pen, back to marker, back to pen, back to pencil, just to get different textures on the paper. And in some cases, I'll even use a white gel pen just to bring back any lost whites that I wanted, that I might have covered up with pen or gray marker. The advantage of filming my process here is I'm able to look in the camera and see the drawing from basically a far distance. It's essentially the same as setting your paper and taking 5 feet back and looking at it. You kind of see more of the flaws when you look at the image in a smaller version of it. Sometimes you'll focus on one area too much, and in reality, you didn't need to. So if you're drawing along at home, hopefully all this helped as far as a tutorial / how to draw a deer. And yeah, consider following me and follow along for the next drawing.